Okay. Good evening. I'm sorry, I have a frog again. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. Tonight is Tuesday, July 5th. It's 7:10. We're starting a little bit late. If you'd join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have to apologize right off the bat. I'm still doctoring. So if I have a coughing fit, we may have to call a recess for 5 minutes. We'll see how crazy it gets. But. All right. Roll call. Randy, please.
Okay, Trustee Truscott is absent and excused this evening. Trustee LaRue,
Here.
Trustee Pompo,
Here.
Trustee Marks,
Present.
Treasurer Johnson,
Here.
Clerk Retire is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, our Civil Counsel Roger Zappa is here. Fire Chief Ron Sims is, or not, Ron DeMars is here. Public Works Director Kirk Page is here, and that's the staff.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, which tonight includes approval of special meeting minutes of June 20th, regular and closed session meeting minutes of June 21st, and special meeting minutes of June 28th. Also received committee and other reports, including the water production report of May, the fire department draft business minute of June 13th, as well as the officer meeting minutes. Bills payable in the amount of $94,234.13, and the May financial and treasurer's report.
The only comment I would have is on our special meeting of June 28th, I had a resident email me and suggest that I put in my minutes that the library board was there, and I thought that's appropriate to do because they were there. So I will put those in the minutes on the front part of that meeting, that other committee board members there. I'll put the Peter White Public Library Board present.
Okay,
So that's all I have.
so we did have a
I
motion.
have a
and
question on the consent agenda.
Sure.
On number B3, did Trustee Pompo ever get an answer on that? We had an answer on that before from Aaron Graves. Was that discussed on
Concerning
the legal question? Did you get an answer on that, Dan?
from Aaron Graves.
Yes, we had a Aaron Graves back on December 17th when we asked that question. It was sent out to him, and
No, I believe the question I had was, it came back as a question from Attorney Zappa.
that is that.
Do you want to pull this out of the consent agenda?
No, we'll discuss it again until we get the right information then, because
Okay.
I got one from Aaron
Not sure which
Graves that
question.
answered that question.
That's on the fire chief's authority, is that
Right.
the one you're asking
That,
about?
right, in the officers' meeting, Danny had a question, and it just seems like it's been going on, and just. I didn't know if he got the answer.
No.
That wasn't.
Before you go there, I did not have a question. It was presented to me by a member of the fire department, in which was asked if we could get from Roger Zappa, our attorney, a decision. I did not have a
okay.
problem.
I was just reading the minutes, and that's what it sounds like. All right, we'll leave it like it is, and we'll.
Okay. We can talk about it after the meeting and see if.
Yeah, as long as we got the right
Tell
information.
me which question you're looking at.
Yeah.
That's fine. If we need to put it on the agenda, then.
The question Danny asked you, so.
Well, he's asked me a couple, and one of them's going to be talked about tonight.
E3, according to the minutes, is on the authority for the minimum call policy. From what I can see here.
Okay. Let's talk about that after. We'll work on that, Pete.
All right.
So we did have a motion and support.
Yeah, and it's actually going to be an amended agenda, or
Okay.
amended consent agenda.
You got the names? You're
Yeah.
good.
Are you okay, Dan? Did you move that?
No problem.
Okay. And Pete seconded
No
that?
problem.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then we need a motion to approve the regular agenda, but we will have an addition. Randy?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda with one addition. Will be under new business 10F. And it will be, the purpose of that agenda will be retention of an appraiser for our pending tax tribunal cases. And I need
And
support
this
on
is the
that.
information you just got, that 20 pages. We just got that.
What are we doing?
We're adding it on to the
Yeah.
regular agenda.
Yeah, 10F, under new business. It'll be retention of an appraiser for pending tax tribunal cases.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, motion passes. Okay, let's get into the agenda then, public comment. Anybody wishing to address the board tonight? Just spectators tonight. Any board member comment? Anything anybody wants to share? Randy?
Okay, I have a few items. Unfortunately, if you did not register to vote, as of 4 o'clock today, you can't vote in the August election. That deadline is now passed. However, don't be discouraged if you didn't. Get in and register, because the November one will be here before you know it. So, and a side note on that, just please come in, and if you have any doubt that you're registered here, just please come in and check, because I had a few folks in the presidential primary that came to vote, and unfortunately they didn't vote in the last two general elections, and they were no longer in the system, so they could not vote. So I would hate to do that to anyone, turn them away and say, well, unfortunately, you're not in our system anymore. So please come in and check to make sure that you're registered. Saturday, July 30th, we'll have someone here from noon to 2. That'll be Saturday, and that's when you can either receive, or we can receive or give out any emergency absentee ballots, so for the August election. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Good reminders, Randy, thanks. Any other board member comment? Yes, John, or was that a no?
Well, that's enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thanks.
Yes, Pete?
Just want to bring up, mark your calendar, August 6th, Community Days at the Lions Recreation Area.
And that starts at what time?
Starts, I think it's 10 o'clock, well, might be a little earlier for the ball games or something like that. But
And it goes till 10? Is
it
that,
goes till
is
10
that lights
o'clock at
out?
night. And I'll have a better description of it next meeting.
Okay, thanks. I don't have much to share either. The Planning Commission's meeting last week, I did listen to the tape because I wasn't able to attend. I figure that Randy will give us an update. And the last couple weeks, we did have the joint meeting. Of course, the board was there, so everybody remembers that, with the library, and signed the contract. So that was monumental. I was able to take that big folder out of my briefcase. That was good. So we'll have discussion about an item tonight on that. And then this week is the supervisor, what I call the supervisor chamber meeting. So if anybody wants to go, just, it's like first come, first serve. It's 5:30 at the chamber office on 3rd Street, so just let me know. And we've been bringing 2 members. So, yes, Randy.
I will, you did remind me about the Planning Commission meeting, so I will give you a brief statement on that, so we don't have to wait until the end of the meeting.
Okay.
We had 2 site plans. We had the Myers store proper, and we had the Myers gas station that we did approve conditionally on with some pending issues. And it went pretty well. The Myers store, as you know, is going to be located behind Lowe's, and some of the pending issues was going to be traffic flow and such. So, and just to let the board know, when we did approve the site plans, we did take your motion into consideration from the night before about the road facilities plan and such. Remember that?
Yes.
To keep with that spirit of that road facilities plan, so hopefully any future development in that area will continue along with that facility plan. So that's it.
Good, thanks, Randy. Unfinished business, 9A, local roads rehab update. So I'm thinking that's Randy.
Yeah, we have both of our folks who typically do the updates out of the area. Dave Wiegand is out of town, and Mark Davatala had another commitment. He thought the meeting had been moved to to next week, so he is not available this evening. Basically, he did give me a very brief summary of where we are. Right now, the work that's being done is postponed work from 2015. It's the remainder of it. They're primarily working on Orchard Street right now. There are several issues with that, with the replacement of the driveways. There is some concern with regard to impact on the road surface that was put down last year, and that will be corrected. So for those residents that are concerned about that, that will be a correction that will be required of the contractor. The 2016 road rehab, Baco, is the contractor that's been awarded. They will be starting August the 8th, and they anticipate completion of that by October 15th. It's a tentative schedule. They have not identified as yet the exact schedule by road, and that'll be coming to you shortly. In the 2016 South Vanderboom project, Associated Construction plans to start work this week on that, and they will be completed by October. Sometime in October, depending on weather. The work on Ontario right now, although that is not our project, we've been monitoring that. Kirk has been monitoring it quite a bit, actually. Our staff has been pretty busy with repairs to water and sewer lines that are being damaged by the construction. But I noticed that they have now at least paved the curbing. The curbs are in, so it looks like they're in the homeward stretch on that project, and should be laying down some surface here pretty quick. So that will alleviate a lot of issues for residents as well. That's pretty much it for right now. Unless board members have any questions.
Yes.
On Ontario Street, on Allen and Ontario Street, every time I go by there, they're either closing up a hole or they're digging it up again, and that, so. What's the status there on that?
Kirk is here and he can speak to it, but my understanding is that they've been having a significant amount of difficulty at that intersection in terms of damaging infrastructure. The most recent, and you'll see on the overtime report when you get the overtime report, we did have a sizable chunk of work and overtime this last weekend because of some odors that were coming from a break, basically. So we've been fairly busy, and when you see those numbers for our staff, they are going to be charged back to the contractor, so we'll be recovering those costs.
Anything else for Randy? Good, thanks. Update on water rescue capabilities. Pardon me.
Chief DeMars is here this evening with some updates on it, but just a real quick update. Even though most of the attention in the various media outlets have been towards the City of Marquette's waterfront committee, they are not the ones that are operating this. We have a fairly large group of folks that have been working on the Little Presque Isle issue. And it's been real positive. Obviously, we were able to come together to get some new signage. The university sponsored some signage along with the National Weather Service, and along with a number of other agencies. The Coast Guard is kind of spearheading this along with us, along with our fire department, who we are the primary response group for that area. Our only issue was we were not well equipped for warm water rescue. We're well equipped for ice rescue and cold weather, but our equipment was not conducive to the type of rescue necessary there. We have been successful in having a lot of volunteer activity. a lot of pledges of contributions and financial assistance to make all this happen. 2 rescue stations have been constructed out there. We have had at least one event that I'm aware of so far where the use of the life jackets was put into play. I'm also aware that over the weekend we had a fair amount of activity off the end of the island, jumping off of the rocks again. So, I think everybody needs to recognize that it is Lake Superior. There is no safe area to swim on Lake Superior. And in particular, if you're going to be in the remote areas like out on the north end of Little Presque Isle itself, jumping off of the rocks, it's going to be quite some time before someone gets to you, even with fast response. So I think a word of caution needs to be there simply because a beach area or an access to big water or even inland water doesn't have rescue equipment doesn't mean it's safe. They all have to be treated as they're hazardous because they all are. Any number of things could happen, and with that, I don't know what Chief DeMars wants to pass along to you, but we have ordered equipment, and we're simply awaiting its arrival currently. Ron, anything you want to add?
Yeah, come up, Ron, sure.
Randy pretty much summarized it. There's actually 3 boards up there. Big old 3 boards. So there is a 3rd board. Tomorrow at 1:30, I don't have my note with me, there is a photo walk out there. I do have it in my schedule. And that'll be for all the agencies that participated, the Coast Guard. Dan Perkins graciously gave up his time to build the stations, and he was familiar with the Marquette one, so they are basically a carbon copy of what you see at Big Rocks. And 2 of the main surfboards are ordered, and the rest of the RFQ is due tomorrow. And the better part of the day today was spent on the phone. It's difficult, as Lynn would know. We don't have a local dive shop anymore, so you can't do the hands-on touchy-feely. And I've been out of diving for like 12, 14 years, and we're basically answering questions back and forth and trying to describe our situation, what the lake's like, and what kind of equipment we're looking to get. So we'll look at the RFQs for the final quotes. Most of them are going to come by email, because we've been answering questions even all through today. I must have talked to every one of the vendors that have responded once or twice today. So we'll see what we get and the pricing, and then go from there. Everyone has agreed, once we get the product, it's simply not functional. We spec, it has to be something that can be done quickly, full zipper suit, because they will literally dress in the truck on the way to the Little Presque Isle or Wetmore's, wherever we're going with it. So it has to be a suit that they can manage to get on while we're in motion and we're moving out there, so.
Wetsuits are not easy to do.
Yeah.
You need to be in the water to put them on.
Well, these are neoprene lines inside, so it'll slide better than the old rubber suits, man.
I've got one in my basement if you want to buy
Have
it.
the rearview mirror in the back and watch these people
Yeah.
struggle. But we're obviously just trying to cut the time from a call to in the water and functional, so. I'll have a lot more on equipment, and we'll probably have a real good picture on pricing of the product by tomorrow, when the RFQs are due by 4 o'clock tomorrow. It's the deadline on them, so.
I guess the last comment is I want to again thank the board for being proactive on this and jumping right on it right away and authorizing us to acquire the materials necessary to be able to effect these rescues. Shore rescues. We will not be going from boat. We'll be rescuing from shore.
If I could, one last shout out, the Marquette Coast Guard Station has gone way over the top, insisting us they are going to provide the entire water rescue school for us, and actually bring us out and allow us to work off the boat and on the boat that we would interact with like in a normal situation. They've asked that we go down to the Coast Guard Station simply because of their response requirement to be able to get on the water. But they have stepped up, and they're going to provide all the training. It's not going to be of any cost to the department. So
Wow, that's
great.
awesome.
Wonderful group of guys.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, if you remember, we approved that 7,500 or 7,000 last meeting for that equipment. Mhm. Okay. New business 10A. I do want to thank Andrea Ingman for coming, our new library director, just to have it on the record that she was here. Consider resolution to approve library ballot millage proposal.
Okay, from our last special meeting, we did approve the contract, and this is now the next step for placing the millage proposal on the ballot. So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to approve library ballot millage proposal. And I don't have to read the resolution, but I will read the library proposal, and then that will be on the November ballot. And it states, library millage renewal proposal, shall the previous voted increase in charter millage in the amount of $1 on each $1,000 of taxable value reduced to .9061, .9061 on each $1,000 of taxable value by required millage rollbacks be renewed in an amount not to exceed .9061 mills, .9061 on each $1,000 of taxable value, and levied for a period of 2 years, 2016 and 2017 inclusive, to be distributed to the Peter White Public Library for the purpose of providing library services to the residents of the Charter Township of Marquette. The estimated revenue the township will collect in the first year, if the millage is approved and levied, is approximately $213,989.62, and that's a yes or no question. And that will, if the resolution is approved this evening, it will go forward to the November ballot. And I have made a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second. I'll second that.
Motion and support. Anything else, Randy?
I have nothing else.
Pete, anything else?
Nothing.
I have a question. Should it have, and this comes to us, this isn't something we wrote, but shouldn't it say that it's for the purposes of providing library services in 2017 and 2018?
No, because it's written for the years that it's levied, which I
Not
think
the years that-
not to the years that it's, yeah. And Roger probably can explain that more.
That's actually an accurate explanation, that the millage itself is what's being approved on the ballot. The millage would be levied if the voters vote yes in December of 2016 and December of 2017. That is, and it's
The
for
issue is
library
the levy.
services.
Yeah, I
And
realize that. It
the
doesn't-
issue then, as far as when the services are provided, that's governed by your contract that you
Okay.
spend a lot of time discussing. This is a fairly simple little resolution, just now that we have a contract, which you're required to have a contract before you place it on the ballot, are we going to place it on the ballot? That is your, with this
the
language.
question. Okay.
That's your question.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Question on the motion.
Correct, yep. What, John?
Question on the motion.
Oh, do you mean to vote?
That's it.
Okay, it's a roll call vote, so Clerk Rattari made the motion, I'm a yes. Trustee LaRue seconded.
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Marks?
No.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
That motion carries, 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Okay.
So I will, with this approval, I will now move this resolution in the ballot language to the county clerk to be placed on the November ballot.
Okay. That was short and sweet.
Yep.
Consider budget amendment 2016-08.
Present to the board Budget Amendment 2016-08. I make a motion to approve that, and the explanation is, a quick explanation of it is authorization is requested to accommodate the revenue expenditures of the MNRTF Development Grant of $36,600. Once the payments are made, funding will be received from the state of Michigan. Also is included is $2,900 for the Lions Field security items, boulder placement, and fencing, and that will come from the fund balance.
Support.
Motion and support. All in, roll call, sorry.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
That motion carries 6-0, 1 absent.
Okay. Next is 10C, consider award of construction contract for the Trowbridge Park Phase 4 low-pressure force main extension. Mr. Page.
Excuse me, last November, the Township Board approved the design and construction engineering services for the Trowbridge Park Phase 4 low-pressure force main extension project. And that work was completed, and we have received our DEQ permit, construction permit. And we did bid this project, and bids were opened on June 23rd. And a bid summary and recommendation for award is attached from our consulting engineer, Kurt Samandel of North Country Engineering. And I concur with the recommendation to award the construction contract for the Trowbridge Park. That should be Phase 4, low-pressure force main extension project, to the low responsive qualified bidder, Oberstar Incorporated, for the total cost of $120,675.
Move to concur with the recommendation of the Superintendent of Public Works.
Support.
Motion and support. John, any questions, or Randy?
Yes, Kirk, is that going to pretty much complete the northwest part of Trowbridge then?
Yes, it will. It's quite a milestone.
So, yeah,
Trowbridge
because,
Park will be completely served by public sanitary sewer.
Whole
Yeah.
thing, okay.
yeah, 'cause I believe that was we tried to get that done for a long time, and now that hopefully that this will be done, and that area will have sewer, and that will be good, so.
Yes, Ernie?
Do you have a number of people waiting to hook up, Kurt?
I don't have a number. I've already had people come into the office, can I pay now? So, this is actually a relatively small project right here. But you're probably asking about the total number. I don't have a number.
I think the other question is, I keep looking at your balance all the time,
Sure, yeah.
where we're standing on the balance and that.
No, it's been a really a great project overall, and it's actually getting better, as we go along. More and more people are recognizing that, it's the right thing to do, So it really, and plus, another thing that's happened is home sales have actually picked up, in the last couple of years. This year, this seems to accelerate even more. So, in fact, we've got one hooking up now, where we installed sewer, I believe, 2006.
Last question is, when I look at the differential of the two bids, about $30,000 or more, that $120,000 versus $159,000, I really question why there's such a big differential. I would assume that we should be closer, but
Yeah, that's, we could debate that for days and years. Contractors, I had no idea. They've all got their own agenda. It's a very competitive business. They're all extremely busy. The high bid, actually, they've got 3 major projects in Marquette Township. They're doing the new hotel, they're doing that Safe Pathways to School, and they're going to be doing the South Vanderbilt Road Water and Sewer project. So they're getting a lot of work.
it just seemed like the
Right,
differential.
and last
when
year's
you start-
project, you might recall, we bid it and got no bids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Well, the simple answer is that sometimes they just don't need the business, so they put in a bid that's, if they get it, then well and good, but they're not looking for that job.
Right.
Conversely, the lower bid too might want the job, so they bid nice and low so they can get it. Yeah, Randy, you had your hand up.
Basically, as John addressed it, and that's what we are seeing. We are seeing that there is so much work this year that the bids are coming in higher on a lot of the contractors simply because they'll have to add additional staff to do the work. So, they don't want to not be in the bidding process. They want to remain in the bidding process, but they want to get a premium if they pick it up for additional work. And the other thing, quite frankly, is that's the reason with the road project that we tried to nail down some prices 2 years ago, recognizing that it was going to get busy and we wanted those lower prices for the road project. So it's all good. I mean, it's all good. The community is thriving. There's a lot of work. People are being employed, and we're growing.
Thank you.
Anything else for Kirk? Any questions? We have a motion too on the floor, right? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk. Tournament expenses. One of our board members asked that we put this on for discussion, and we did a little bit of research. We had legal look at it, and he did give us a statement today. Rob Thal, MTA's attorney from Bachman, Sparks, Thal, Sieber, and Kaufman. And the question before us is the fire department tournament that takes place every year, which had been paid by some of the expenses have been paid by the township in the past. And the discussion has come up as to whether or not this is a viable expense for the township. So the question we're going to answer hopefully tonight, that is the question we're going to answer tonight, hopefully. Dan, you can give us some background on your side. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I'd like to make a statement. First of all, I'm going to make the assumption that nobody here has attended a firefighters tournament. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, so in that case, let me try to explain what happens in the 2.5-day event. I will try to do that as I've attended each one of with the exception of one in my 29 years that I've participated in the department. First off, a little history. This year's tournament is the 122nd annual tournament. This tournament's been going on for 122 years. Participants from all townships throughout the UP, as well as recently 2 Wisconsin communities, participate. The number of townships participating have ranged from 70 to 40. This is an event that the host department starts planning at least 2 years in advance. As one can imagine, an influx of upwards of 2,000 people attending as well as sign up the event can be a daunting task. Many of those who attend plan their vacations from work around this event. The event allows members to interact with other departments to help and learn techniques and problems concerning the fire service. As I stated, the event consists of 2.5 days. The tournament is sponsored by the UP Firefighters Association, of which almost all the townships are members. This event allows 3 different organizations, the UP Volunteer Firefighters Association, UP Chiefs, and the Michigan State Firefighters Association, to have their meetings with the majority of the departments are present. The first day, which is a Thursday, registration meetings are held in the morning and afternoon. These meetings consist of new information concerning the fire service as well as any state changes that would affect the fire service. Presenters consist of the head of state training council, the state fire marshal, the head of the State of Michigan Firemen's Association, local officials, state representatives, law enforcement, as well as others. There's a lot of information that's presented at these meetings as well as business being conducted. One thing that I noticed is a moment of silence observed in the afternoon for all those firefighters who have died in the last year. Marquette Township, unfortunately, have had to add names to this list. At around 7 p.m., a dress parade begins. This parade features all of the departments parading in their dress uniforms, allowing all the local people and guests the opportunity to acknowledge and show their appreciation for the job these firefighters do. The departments pass in front of a judge's stand where points are awarded for the number of participants, their appearance, and precision of their marching. This is a proud moment for each member to represent their township. Later in the evening, there's a street dance and a shirt tail parade, which consists of the department's float for the tournament theme for this year. Points are also awarded in this parade. Early the next day, the races are held. They consist of 5 races in which participants from each department show their skills and teamwork to accomplish tasks related to firefighting techniques and a timed race. Points and trophies are awarded to the top 5 teams in each race. This is an event in which firefighters take very seriously. Some departments practice all year to obtain the bragging rights to be the best. Our department has obtained those bragging rights at times. The conclusion of the day, Friday, is a fireman's ball, in which all prizes are awarded for parades and races in an atmosphere of respect and brotherhood that all firefighters share. Saturday has a final commercial parade in which the final points are given and the totals are added up to see which department will be crowned the tournament champion. In any other event, such as the annual MTA conference, networking with friends that you have known throughout your career is a byproduct and a plus of this event. In referring to Rob Thal's answer to Dennis Limita's question, he states that it is not official training, but sounds more like an entertaining expense. Would leave one to believe that the information he was given lacked a full description of tournaments. I would like to refer to Manager Gerard's attachment that he gave the board titled Determining Lawful Township Expenditures. In it, it states that upon reviewing Constitution, statutes, case law, Attorney General opinions, and other information, a township expenditures should be made for public purpose. A township should make sure it is getting a value for value. It also states every year MTA and Department of Treasury receive reoccurring questions in which no court decision or Attorney General opinion has been rendered. Typically, these have to do with expenditures for dinners, recognition awards, parties, or decorations. For instance, many townships would like to provide a recognition dinner for their firefighters at the end of the year. It is the MTA legal counsel opinion that if a township provides in its policy for its volunteers or employees that this is a benefit or compensation for their volunteering, this would be a lawful expenditure. It is also noted that if a township doesn't have this policy, this does not serve a public purpose and should not be employed. It seems that every year this question keeps being brought up. Rob Dahl's response was dated November of 2014, yet last year there was no problem in granting this request. This whole debate here appears to have been started when a representative of the board to the fire department. When, as a representative of the board to the fire department, I was asked to check on a rumor of a memo that came out stating that tournaments will not be funded this year. On May 9th, I posed a question to Manager Rod, who stated that it could have come from discussion by the board about legal opinions regarding expenditures from special assessment revenues regarding fire protection and prevention, and in general appropriate expenditures of township funds. He also went on to state that in the past few years, the board approved funds from the general fund to offset the cost, but that money was not budgeted in the general fund. My response to him was that the money never came from the general fund, but has always been budgeted from the fire fund for tournaments, and this was just a request to release the funds. He then responded back that then he didn't know where the rumor came from. So now it's brought up again. With all this information, the Marquette Township Fire Departments and its members have always given so much of themselves to protect this community and show the pride they have. It seems that if we can expend over $2,000 in advertising or promoting a car show, what does this say of our promotion of the department?
Any other comments or suggestions, or? Okay.
Where'd that come from, Dan?
Where'd what come from?
Your information?
What information?
You just read?
He
You just wrote that out?
He wrote that.
I wrote it out.
Okay.
It's been stated by some who, not necessarily directly to me, but some who have gone to the tournament and some who haven't, that this is just a party. And that's why we need to have that discussion. If this is the Trowbridge Fire Department or if it's the Marquette Township Fire Department. And if 5 guys are going out of 32 or 3, or how well this is attended. So this is the kind of stuff that I've been hearing, and I think it's time we put some of it to rest. We need to make a decision if we're going to do this. Not that the next board can't change whatever their preference is. But unless we put this in the policies that we are going to support this and see value in it, excuse me, as an educational venue, we can't pay for something that isn't board recognized, and that's where we have to go, in my mind. We either decide that this is something we're going to support, that we feel it's not just 3 or 4 days off at the township's expense, that there is an educational benefit. If it's competition, it's going to be controlled by our policies and procedures. It's not just going to be a free-for-all. If that isn't the case, then we have nothing to worry about. So I'd like some input on this, on how we're going to go forward. We've got our legal opinion. We've got 2 choices. We can either write it into the policies and procedures in the personnel manual, or we say no. Randy?
Well, I guess this is getting all blown out of proportion unnecessarily. Nobody has ever taken a position of saying we can't go to the tournaments. The question has always been, is it a proper expenditure of township funds? Comparing it to the MTA conference is totally an invalid comparison. The MTA conference is nothing but educational sessions all day long. Yes, there are some social activities in the evenings. That's not the case with the fire tournaments. Now, I agree that there's camaraderie and things such as that occur, but far and away, it would be very hard-pressed, I would think, to take the 2015 agenda for the firemen's tournaments and point out more than maybe 2.5 hours of actual things that could be identified as educational. I've never taken a position that tournaments aren't valuable and don't have a value. The question that I have to raise as your liability manager is it a proper expenditure of township dollars? The communication that Dan was citing doesn't say don't do the tournaments. It says go ahead, but fund it out of the membership fund until we get a definitive answer from the board in terms of how we're going to continue to fund it. You do have several options. You can establish it as a regular township program within the fire department and fund it. If that is the case, then it falls under all other township programs, meaning it's covered by policies and procedures and practices, and there are some things you cannot do. It's not coming from us. It's coming from right here in your most recent issue of Township Focus that came today. Department of Treasury is auditing. Department of Treasury is questioning whether the electoral folks can even provide meals for the people working for elections. Is that a legal expenditure of public dollars? What is the public benefit that comes from it? That's the question that has to be answered. We are not Western UP Township Fire Department. We're City of Marquette Fire Department. So comparing us to those departments for camaraderie and practices and procedures it's an invalid argument, in my opinion. We're far and away more advanced than a lot of those departments. The question becomes, how do you fund it legally, and how do you avoid challenge? And that's the only question that I'm raising. If the board wants to decide to make this a regular function of the fire department, then fund it as such, and have it be under policy. Otherwise, the membership fund should fund it as an event. I don't think the entire department participates in this. I think there's a small group of people that participate on a regular basis, and the benefit to the public is questionable, in my opinion. So.
Go ahead.
I'm just going by what we dug out on the 14th from Robert Thal, and he said, attendance of the department membership at an annual UP Fire tournament is not an appropriate expense. Now, just find out, is it or isn't it? You had 3 different things. I'd like to see what Roger has to say so we can have a work session and get more information and find out for next meeting. You got one say yes, one say no, We do appreciate all the extra work they do, but, are we allowed to do it? I asked Randy if you could fund meals for the election crew a while back. He dug that out, and you're allowed to do that. He found that out. And so it's just a matter of question. What can we do? What can't we do? And coming from our library session, I think we have to ask these questions so we know what they are. I'm just saying that the material that I have, it says you can't do it. Now, if you wanted to find another way of doing it, that's fine. But right now, according to what our attorneys, and hell knows we pay enough money to our attorneys to give us some, information and some options. So that's all we can go by.
Roger, do you want to add anything?
Well, we had given an opinion on this a number of years ago when I had requested some information. I've never been at a fire department tournament. I'll be the first one to state. But at least at that point, and I think it was strictly an oral opinion, this is 10-plus years ago. And the agenda that I was provided at that time did include things that could be considered educational and training. Whether that's changed in the meantime, I have no way of knowing or any firsthand knowledge of what's on that. But based on strictly what was being presented 10, 12 years ago at a particular meeting, we had offered an opinion that there was an educational component, and if there is an educational or a training component to it, and it has to be a significant component of it, but at least, again, based on that particular one, lots of years ago, we came to the conclusion that there was. If there is an educational and a training component, you do not necessarily need to have a separate policy because it is educational and training. However, if there isn't, you can still go to it. That just gets back to the question of should it be funded elsewhere from the membership fund or from some municipalities seek contributions from the public, from businesses and so forth that fund it in that fashion. It still may have value. The purpose of a policy, as I understand it, within the the context of a proper expenditure is you are dealing primarily with volunteer. You have a volunteer fire department except for your couple of paid staff that you have, and a policy could indicate that that is essentially like a fringe benefit or that's a component of recognition or compensation that's going to be included. And that's essentially what your policy would be, and you'd have to articulate that a little bit better than I just did. I didn't realize this was a question on the agenda until about 6:05 this evening, so this isn't a researched opinion by any means. But those are your options. I can't comment at this point on whether a 2016 convention is or isn't an educational or a training type of event because I just don't know. But if that information is made available, and it is, that can be a proper expenditure of funds. It's got to be looked at on an individual case-by-case basis to some extent on what the public purpose is. Some examples that, there have been some cases and even more Attorney General opinions over the years of things that are not proper expenditures, and some of them might strike you as peculiar. Flowers, for example, at a funeral are generally considered to be improper expenditures. Even though it might be a good idea, the use of the public funds for flowers at a funeral is generally not considered a proper expenditure. And the rationale of that is that once the person is deceased, there's going to be no further benefit in terms of services coming back. And that's a very callous and harsh way of looking at it, perhaps, but there has to be some type of a benefit to the township by that expenditure. Another one that you'll see struck down in Attorney General opinions from time to time would be a watch at retirement. Same type of thing. You might have had someone in your clerical department or fire department or public works who's put in 40 years and given the best years of their lives towards public service, but if they're retiring, giving them that gift of $120 for their watch is exactly that. It's a gift of public funds because you're not going to be expecting to get any further benefit from that employee at that point. However, in contrast, a fire's tournament, there could be, if it has those educational and training components, some type of service or benefit to the public because, at least in theory, those people who are going to participate are going to, again, depending on what's occurring at the tournament, gain some knowledge and insight in new techniques, new equipment, things like that, that could be utilized for the benefit of the general public for their future services. So it's not automatically disqualified as as an improper expenditure. It depends on what's happening at the tournament. Now, something else that came up in the course of the discussion, if it is going to be a public expenditure of funds, then the township does have an obligation to make sure that certain policies and principles are followed in order to avoid liabilities. So that would include things that are in the personnel policy and so forth, just as if this was a fire or repair of a fire hydrant or anything else during the course of township ordinary business. And that has become a subject of greater scrutiny in the last few years, not just through the Department of Treasury and some of the other governmental oversight agencies, but even in terms of your PAR plan and your insurance coverage, there is a lot more monitoring of just what happens on events that are not physically inside either the fire hall or inside the township hall. So that's some thoughts based on having seen it for the first time about an hour and a half ago. But
So based on what Dan offered, pardon me, you see that first day of meetings, which I thought was just officers maybe, or or the chiefs, that would be something that would be covered. So the motel to stay overnight for the parade or meals, that kind of thing.
again, I have not seen an agenda to know what type of activity is going on per se. This was all pretty general. I'm not prepared to say it is or it is not. I'm just saying there are a number of factors that don't automatically disqualify it, or by the same token, don't automatically say this absolutely is. All I'm saying is that there are conditions under which it could be a proper township expenditure with some control and limitation from a liability standpoint, but we would really need to know what's going on at the convention in terms of reaching that conclusion that this particular event is a proper expenditure.
So we can kind of decide that then.
Yes.
Okay. Randy?
Yeah, I don't want this to be construed or portrayed as though I'm attacking the fire department. The furthest from the truth. My response was, the question of whether the tournament costs are lawful township tax revenue expenditures have been raised numerous times, as Dan mentioned. MTA published articles like the attached, which I attached, and the MTA attorney's advice cautions that unless there is a discernible benefit to the township, the expenditure is not a lawful township expenditure. Although not specifically addressed in the attached articles, several of the examples certainly raise the question of what specific public purpose or benefit is derived by the tournament participation that would justify the expenditure. From that standpoint, given the history of activities, I advise that the membership fund cover the expenditures to avoid the appearance of not being lawful. I mean, and that's all that this is basically, take all the smoke screen away. What is it? What does it distill down to? What is the discernible benefit that the township and the residents would gain from their participation? If there is, then it's properly funded through the regular budget. If there's not, then it needs to be funded from a different mechanism. Membership fund, as Roger said, contributions from some other. I asked Rob Thal with an email that Pete cited, that all of you that you got, that came in at 5:57 this afternoon. Is there a mechanism that the township could contribute to the membership fund? And his answer was no, there isn't. The only thing the township can do is to establish it as a regular township benefit, as Roger mentioned, to the firefighters. And in that standpoint, would be able to cover it as a discernible benefit. However, you would then have to cover the liability issues. And we have had liabilities in the past. We've had workers' compensation claims come from the tournament. I mean, so there have been expenses in the past, so we need that protection. That's all that this is about, is how is it properly funded? Not whether or not it occurs. We have a long history of participating, and I suspect we will well into the future. But how is it properly funded? And that question has been raised numerous times. It's never really been addressed by the board.
That's why I'm hoping we can put this to rest. Ron? I asked Ron to either make a statement or at least be here to answer questions from the fire department side. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but
And do we have officers attending these meetings?
that's what I want to find out,
And what, do
and
our
what they're
chief go up there?
participating in. Because my understanding is that if there's a meeting in the morning for officers or chiefs or something, and that's it. So,
The state fire marshal.
can you come up, though? Sorry, Ron.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah. We have too many folks that can't hear what you're saying.
At least, and I have not attended in the last, maybe, I don't know, I can't, last 10, 11, 12 years. I chose to stay back. You know, we've always put a crew on to make sure we have coverage at the station. I enjoy that aspect of it. The meeting on Thursday, generally the state fire marshal will come up and he basically gives you a highlight of, you know, what's going on in Lansing pertaining to the fire department, fire service. And I guess, you know, I was hoping, I went to at least 12 of the tournaments and I immensely enjoyed myself. So I am not anti-tournament. As a department head and the overseer of my budget, I'm worried about my budget this year because of the extra amount of money that was taken to give to the water department. Has significantly impacted our budget negatively. And we've had a number of expenses. I have 5 accounts that are in the 100+ % of their annual, and we're, you know, barely 6 months into the fiscal year. So I have a concern from there. I was hoping there would be a mechanism to channel it through the membership fund, and so that we could kind of circumvent some of that liability issue. But I guess if that is essentially not an option for us. You know, but that's pretty much, you know, the Thursday, I think that meeting breaks up, what, Dan, by 1, 2 o'clock usually, by the time the sheriff and everybody gets there.
No, the fire chief's meeting starts around 9, I believe, and goes to like 12. And then at 2 o'clock, the general meeting starts, and that goes till like 3:30, 4 o'clock. Where there's where all the business of the UP Firefighters Association is conducted during that meeting.
So basically, we have an hour-and-a-half meeting for the general.
You have an hour and a half to 2-hour meeting for the fire chiefs and representative. Usually there's 2 that go. You have anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours of a associates meeting where the 2 representatives, because the Marquette Township has 2 representatives that can vote in anything that is brought up to the association. We are most every department in the UP is a member of the association. It gives the opportunity for all the information to be given out to all the different ones. There's much that goes on during that meeting. We hear from, again, it's some of it is a rehash of what happened at the chiefs meeting, and then other things is where we'll have officials from the host town will actually be there and give their welcome and their thanks, and law enforcement will come and give their rules, and basically it's just a rehash. Then it goes into what's going to happen during the whole tournament, and it completes by a selection of the race team order, of which how the race team order is run. And as well as there is quite a few static displays also that go on continually from many of the fire apparatus companies as well as their equipment companies.
Any questions for Ron?
I have one. Do you designate someone who's supposed to attend those meetings if you're not there? You're not there, the fire marshal's not there. You designate somebody to be that?
I haven't in the past.
Pardon me?
Just let the group that's gonna go pick their own individuals. I've gone to Lansing 2 and 3 times a year, and I can keep up with anything I need between the internet and just pick up a phone and call. So I have not gone, this will only be the second time the tournament I'm active while I've been chief. I haven't gone, I didn't go last year, and I frankly wasn't planning to go this year. I was gonna make sure I stay back and look at what we have for manning. We're not gonna be able to afford to man the station like we did in previous years, at least not at the number that we did.
You get a report back on what happens and what's said at the meetings?
I get the agenda and back. They bring back, there's always the handout packets and whatever little coolies or whatever you get as your gift package for going to the community.
Ron, how much money are we talking about? How much money are we talking about? That this would, what would it cost?
I have no idea the number of people that are even planning to go as of yet. So it's just it's motel, meals, you know, and that's pretty much.
Dan, do you know?
It's a budget expense of $2,000. That's what's given every year. It comes out of the fire department fund, and that covers the hotels and some meals, as well as any travel expenses that happen. Most of the time, they all try to pool together or rent a van where the whole group goes up. And then any money that isn't used is given back to the department. Also, I might mention that the tournaments are open to any member of the department. They choose whether they want to go. It's not that it's the same people, it's just that those are the only ones that seem to want to go to it. Those are the same ones that could bring the trophies home every year, as well as the trophies for the Marquette 4th of July, as well as the Nagani Pioneer Days, as well as the County Fair. Everybody seems to be concerned about the trophies, wondering where they are. Well, they're all from these same people, and they do the same races there as they do up in the tournaments. Only there's a lot more people that they are competing against, a lot more departments. So if you're looking for reasons why they should be there, just the fact that they represent this township is enough of a reason. I guess my question falls back to what value is putting $2,000 worth of advertising for a car show to this township? I mean, really?
For the whole community, that's very obvious.
Well, it's for the whole community, but so is the fire department for the whole community.
It's the tournament we're talking about.
Okay, so what value does spending $2,000 for a car show advertisement to the township? What face value to value, which is what is said in this thing that we got? What value is that?
Well, the value is that the board has established it as an objective. That's
What's
the value.
the value to value that they state in the thing that you sent us to the township?
Value is it brings people into the township who spend money in the township, who come in and develop businesses in the township and recreate in the township, which was an objective that the board established when they established the Community Events Committee and charged them with the charter to do this. Same as community days.
If we choose to do that with the tournament, then it will be established the same way. That's what we need to decide. Anything else for Ron? Ernie, go ahead.
Not really for Ron, but just comments listening to. I have not attended any tournaments, even locally, but watching on TV and listening to the written reports and that as to what's going on in that, I look at it as a networking environment for the different communities and that. If you have a mutual agreement with other communities and that, you actually have a chance to work with them and meet with them and talk with them other than under an emergency situation and that, which I think is beneficial in that. And then we start training, really isn't a training, it's a training exercise to see how fast you can do things in that. To me, that in itself, when you get on site for a fire, you're under a gun to get things done relatively quickly in that, and you want to make sure you're done right in that. And if not, you're going to have some problems. So I think there's benefits for it overall. I don't see any big problem. Our manager brought up, one was the liability end of it and that, which is something we have to address in that, how we're going to handle it at that point in time. If we put it as a benefit, if you want to call it that, to the fire department or the firefighters or that, or however we want to handle it in that, that's something we have to address at that point in time. Dollar amount, $2,000 to me, when you look at a budget of $1.5 million, $3 million in our general fund, and that relatively small in that too. So I think there's some beneficial for the community when they do go out and meet with other ones in that. I don't have a big problem with that myself in that. I think just the way we have to address it in that and move forward in that. So.
But this is out of the fire budget, right, Randy? This doesn't come out of the general fund.
It's fire budget, yes, and it is in the budget. It's included in the 2016 budget. It is there. Again, the only question before the board is how do you wish to categorize it and fund it? And that's, Treasurer Johnson's making some valid points. There is, there is the benefit of meeting with other firefighters. The question is, what does that enhance our department to do here in the township? And that, and that's the community benefit. And I'm not suggesting that there isn't. All that I'm saying is that a decision needs to be made as to whether it's going to be a benefit to the fire department, or if it's going to be something that the fire department does on their own through the membership fund. That's all. I mean, that's the decision the board, the decision the board has to make. Are you going to establish it as Roger said, and as the attorneys have said, as a, quote, benefit to the fire department? And I guess it's not any different than establishing in the police department a SWAT team, things such as that, same type of a structure. It's a funding question, that's all. It's not a validity question, it's not a value question, it's not any other question along those lines, or a participation question. It's how is it going to be paid? That's the question, and how are you going to limit your liability? If it's out of the membership fund, you have no liability. If it's as a benefit, you do. And that's, as Treasurer Johnson mentioned, has to be addressed in your policy statement that establishes it. What level of liability are you going to assume, and what level of liability will the participants assume?
So, say 20 guys decided they wanted to go, $2,000 isn't going to be enough. Who covers the rest?
Oh, you would set a
Doesn't
budget.
cover-
It's like
that's what I'm saying.
anything
We have
else.
to
Once
decide.
you exceed your budget,
If
then
we-
you have to find other sources to fund.
If we, agree to pay for anybody that goes, or they're limited to so many people, or so many dollars, we'd have to decide that too.
And you do that in the budget cycle.
Go ahead, John.
It seems to me that individuals on the board are going to make an evaluation of whether this is a benefit or not. And they have to do that, and in doing that, it seems to me that our obligation as a board would be to consider the suggestion that's been made to first make a finding that this tournament is a training exercise where firefighters may learn and share the best firefighting techniques. Without taking that action, our obligation to make sure that we're covered by state law seems to be in question. So that's where we're at. And individually and collectively, under the supervision of our supervisor, we need to make that decision. Once we make that, we can go the rest of the way. You can check with Roger, but I think that's where we are.
Go ahead, Pete.
Because as it stands right now, they're saying it is not appropriate expense unless you do this.
Well, no, pardon me, that isn't what I'm saying.
No, I'm just reading it here. From Roger Thal, it says you can't do it. And the one we just got from Roger Thal, it said you have to set up a benefit as a benefit.
We have to establish
John said.
that
Yeah,
that's what
same
we're going to
thing basically
do.
with different words.
But we haven't done that. So, do we want to have a work session and talk about this and to set up parameters?
And what does it involve if we do put it as a benefit?
If it's going to fall under the auspices of our policies and procedures, we need to have some kind
They
of
might not want that.
structure. Who's they?
The fire people
Department.
who go.
Isn't time pretty short?
I don't know when it is.
Aren't
I
we
forgot to
close to either having to make a decision or not making a decision?
When is the tournament?
When is the tournament?
I forgot to ask.
28th of July.
Oh, a couple of weeks.
Say again? When is it?
When is the tournament?
July 28th, he said.
Oh, it was the end of July.
It's your pleasure, folks.
Well, I think the board simply needs to decide whether you wish to whether you wish to declare that participation in the tournament is a fire department benefit for whoever in the department is chosen or volunteers or whatever to go to the tournaments, or you make a determination that you don't want to go that route, and if there's going to be a participation in the tournaments, the membership fund needs to fund it as a voluntary event. So I think that's the decision that you need to make in terms of the value of the benefit to the township residents and the township coming back for participation. And that's a decision that you have to make individually.
Dan?
I'd make note that this started back in May. I find it kind of irresponsible that we're actually going into this in July, but I'm looking at the email that we just received from Rob Thal, I'm looking at the second option that he's offering here. Is second, the board could make a finding that the tournament is a training exercise where firefighters may learn and share the best firefighting techniques, which they do. It would then be up to someone to challenge that finding. I would ask that out of probably average 50 departments that attend this thing, and I'm going to venture a guess that 75 to 80% of the townships are paying their way. So what you're basically telling me is that all these townships are in violation.
Could be. Yeah, and basically that was what I just said. That's the decision the board needs to make. If you're going to make the determination that it is a valued training event, then fine, so be it. If not, then it has to be funded in a different manner. That's basically what Dan just said. And that is an option.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Maybe I'm asking our attorney for some advice at this point in time. A type of a motion that we should be considering, because I'm looking at it as Trustee Pompel said, is a training exercise, which I think it is overall, and because they're working at it. So, but some people may not agree with me. We could set up as a benefit, but we need to do something. So we need to move forward one way or another at this point in time in that too. So
That would be the benefit. Making the determination that it is a valid training exercise would be the benefit that you would be establishing for funding. If the feeling of the board is that is not what's occurring there, that it's more social in nature, then you wouldn't fund it. You would have it be funded under the membership. I mean, that's basically the question.
What's the difference? What would they-
Liability.
Liability. What else?
Primarily liability.
Yep. That's the crux of it.
Well, liability and challenge, you know, Dan's absolutely right. Most of the smaller departments probably aren't even aware that there's an issue.
Well, we find that at MTA all the time.
Yeah.
It's constant in some of these townships. Dan?
Unfortunately, some of those townships are also lower Michigan, which have no idea what a UP fireman tournaments are and don't participate. But I'm going to go on this other one, is the fact that, and this is not just for the fire department. It seems to me that in reading this article that Randy sent us, it says, it is the MTA's legal counsel opinion that if a township provides in its policy for its volunteers or employees that this is a benefit or compensation for their volunteering, this would be a lawful expenditure. So I don't understand, and again, this money is coming from the fire department fund, not the township fund. If you want to take it out of the fire department fund, make a policy for the volunteers and employees, of all volunteers and employees, that this is a $2,000 expenditure that the township can make, then do that. But you have to realize this is for all volunteers. It's not just the fire department. So to give anybody any special thing for volunteering, you're in violation then.
Yeah, that's a question. That's why Randy mentioned it about feeding the election workers. They're volunteers, but they get paid. I mean, they volunteer their time, but they're treated more like employees, like contract employees.
Just like anything else, we are more and more under scrutiny all the time, and this is Michigan Department of Treasury that is initiating these.
Go ahead, Randy.
I didn't really want to go to the election meals because that was a contention. Probably a year or two ago, and it did state in the MTA magazine that after a long and drawn-out process that it is a lawful expenditure if the election workers cannot leave the facility to go and have a break. So that's the basic situation there. If they can't leave the facility, we can provide meals for them. So I'm thinking probably with this fire department tournament expense that if we declare it a benefit, then there's going to have to be something written in policy about it, because I just think, and I agree with the treasurer that the liability concerns are an issue for us, and we can't really not look at that, because if the election meals, if I couldn't do it, I wouldn't, and I'd be breaking the law if I couldn't do it. So, but I just think we have to go that route, declare it as a benefit, and do something with that nature that Mr. Thal suggested.
Are you making that a motion?
I could I could do that we establish it as a benefit, and then move on from there, I guess.
Support.
Okay. Roger, do we have to have all of this established in policies and everything before they go? I mean, how quickly do we have to actually establish this? Is just by the fact that we make the motion and approve it, are we okay? Or do we have to go through a process?
Well, I guess you could essentially establish what your policy is at this meeting, and you've already got an opinion from Rob Thal at the MTA. I'm imagining that this isn't the first time that he's indicated this keeps coming up year after year. He's probably got a canned policy that he could send you in a day or so, would be my suspicion. Now, I haven't checked on that. As I said earlier tonight, I didn't really know this was an issue until
What's the
this
motion
evening.
before us?
The motion would be to establish I guess any volunteer going to the tournament as a benefit, and then township policy would have to govern, I guess, a few things associated with that.
Okay, then, so will we have to have something at the next meeting approving the policy too? Change, or would this do it?
Do it.
Yeah, I think this would do it.
Without seeing the policy? Is it all right to do that?
Well,
And then we could
for-
just direct staff to
for the-
update the policy manual, or?
Now, for the immediate purpose, what your motion would be to recognize the tournaments as a training exercise and to authorize obtaining a policy to provide liability protections.
Well, or perhaps another way of restating the same thing is you are finding that it is an educational and training exercise and authorizing and finding it that it's a benefit to the firefighters who would wish to go, subject to a budgetary limit per year, and subject to compliance with all policies, personnel and other policies in effect at present. Because you're not really modifying those policies, you are just officially making a declaration that participation in this event is an educational or training type of activity. And you would have something very simple and cryptic that would go in your policy book to that effect. But this motion here tonight would be what would be adopting that, and along with that motion that you're requiring compliance with any policies in force or effect.
Okay. Ron, you wanted to add something?
It's your $2,000.
Again, I don't have an issue with going or how you pass the money through or how we do it. I would be opposed if we're gonna make it a benefit. First of all, we can't send 50% of the people, and I think Dan would agree 50% of the people are not going to choose to go to the tournament anyway. we're not a rural fire department, we're a suburban fire department. We have multi-million dollars worth of people's property that we're protecting and EMS calls that we perform. So we have to maintain minimal manning back here. We don't have the luxury of closing the fire hall stores and locking the lights. And if we're gonna pass this through the fire department, then I think the policy manual that we have today is the policy. Why would we write a specific policy to cover the fireman's tournament? It makes absolutely no sense. We have a policy manual of conduct of the firefighters. And if they violate the policy manual, then the township's not liable for their actions. It's as simple as that. You know, as a department head, I need to protect my budget and the department. And I don't know why we simply, if we're gonna make it a benefit, just allow it to go forward. We're not gonna write a specific set of guidelines, policies, I would hope, to govern a tournament once a year. We have a policy manual, it took us a long time to hash out.
He's kind of recommending, though, that there is something in the personnel policy providing for us to annually do this, annually support it. So maybe that just means adding a line at some point.
Well, I think all it means is your action recognizing it as a benefit, and Ron's right, the policy manual then applies.
Okay. John, go ahead.
I'm sympathetic for the intent of the motion that's before us, but I think there's a simpler motion that would be useful for us to consider. And if I had my choice, I'd make that motion, make a finding that the tournament is a training exercise where firefighters may learn and share the best firefighting techniques, and delete all this other stuff that you're fooling around with, because it's not needed. That's all you need to do, is simply make a finding. And once we do that, we can walk away from this thing and they can go ahead. You don't need to change any other books or do any other revisions.
There's nothing in there about the educational part of it, though.
If you just say that, you've covered your bottom.
Well, he's saying that it needs to be more than that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, the funding is in the education and training line item of the budget.
Dan?
It appears to me that this has been bouncing around for many, 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 many years, to the fact that it finally went back to the fire department and they took it out of their fund. It's in their budget every year. It's taken out of their budget every year for this specific thing. The fact that, looking to read it, I'm reading Rob Thal's latest comment, is the fact that if this board makes a policy concerning volunteers, that now we can now move this back out of the fire department's fund and put it back into the general fund, because there is a policy for the general fund for volunteers. It's, again, not just necessarily firefighters, anybody that goes and picks up dirt on the street or helps in putting it at the playground or cleaning the parks or whatever. There's a fund there for that. That would be a part of the request for those volunteers during budget time. So it seems to me that Rob Dahl is simply saying, if you have a policy for that, then that's fine. So at this point in time, their money is already budgeted under the fire department's fund. Next year or whatever, between now and next budget sessions, to sit down and come up with a policy for volunteers in the township, which would cover everybody that volunteers, which is a volunteer fire department. So that's just my opinion on that one. I have to agree with John.
Thought I heard voices down here. Yes, no? Okay. We have a motion on the floor. You wanna
I would
read
just
it?
like to have some kind of a reporting back and stuff like that.
Well, the motion is to basically approve the tournament as a benefit for the firefighters. It's just to prove it as a benefit.
I think that is much more cut and dried. Okay. Any more discussion? Nope. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries, I believe.
For clarification, are we under the township's policies and procedures?
Yep.
And
All
it
of
c-
them.
It continues to come out of the fire fund as it is right now? Is that, does that need to be
No, that's where it's at, education and
established?
training.
Okay. Okay. If we want to do something with volunteers at another time, we can then.
And we can look at that at the actual budget time,
We
too.
we don't compensate volunteers at all, out of the general fund. The folks that volunteer are pure volunteers, are not paid on calls. They're pure volunteers, they get no compensation, no benefits, no coverage.
But this gives us the opportunity to do that.
I have no intention of doing that in the general fund.
Well, again, you may not have any intention of it, but it's up to the board to decide whether or not it goes in there.
We can fund the
Plus-
fire department directly, indirectly.
It is directly
Yeah. we can
funded in
fund
the fire department.
So if we want to do something with the volunteer idea, we'll do it at another time.
Yes.
Okay.
Then I'd just like to, put it for the people who go, you come back with some kind of a report and how they did and stuff like that, so. How many here had seen the trophies?
There's
Picture of
meetings, there's minutes of every one of the meetings that go on there, as well as the trophies that come back.
Trophies should come here and present them and then take a picture of it so we have it. The trophies didn't come to the township hall until 5-6 months after the
The
tournament.
trophies are in the fire hall.
Now,
Always have been, always will be.
they were not there before, though, Dan. They were
Not there
still-
before when?
6 months after the tournament, they were not there.
Really?
Okay, can we move on? The manager's report?
Okay, not an awful lot to add on the manager's report. We did have the car show and cruise. We had over 100 entries. It was the largest that we've had so far. Next scheduled event, as Pete mentioned earlier, is the Community Catch Division Community Day at Lions Field. That'll be Saturday, August the 6th. Full slate of activities all day long for the family. It is a family-friendly event. It is not just for township residents. All are welcome. We will be starting to put the preliminary budget together. As prior years, it'll be based upon the June 30th closing, which will probably be somewhere around the end of July. Then we'll start putting the budget together. Our new patrol vehicle has been ordered. We were able, the Sheriff's Department was able to salvage all of the internal equipment, all the radios and radar and everything was salvageable. The only thing that wasn't at this point were the front push bars with the siren and the lights. They were destroyed in the accident. And the camera, the dash camera, due to the impact, was thrown from its mountings on the dashboard, so that needs to be replaced. We do not have a delivery date as yet, but the Sheriff's Department has transferred another vehicle from their pool to cover for our officer. However, it is not distinguishable by color from as a township vehicle. Corridor Committee, pretty straightforward. There were not minutes at this meeting. You will have minutes of the last Corridor Committee meeting for your meeting on the 19th. And there is nothing pending before the ZBA. We do have the Forestville, I'm not sure what they're calling it this year, the Forestville gathering at the NTN Trailhead is coming up within the next week or so, I believe it is. So that generally would be considered to increase traffic, but again, this year they are shuttling. They are not allowing mobile traffic into their trailhead. They have satellite parking areas, and they'll be busing folks from those parking areas to the trailhead and back. So we should not see an significant increase of traffic on Forestville Road.
Any questions for the manager? No? Okay, we can move on to the question of retention for tax appraiser for our tribunal issues that have plagued us over the years now.
We do have, you do have some paperwork. We're kind of under a time constraint on this, that's why we kind of charged our attorney to go out and try to find somebody, excuse me, for us when we have the cases that we are going to, I don't want to say litigate, that's not the right word, mitigate, maybe. So anyway, Roger, do you want to add anything to this?
Sure. Briefly, you've got about 8 pending tax tribunal appeals right now. And the tax tribunal issues orders in terms of when you must file your valuation disclosures. A valuation disclosure is essentially an appraisal. You have 4 that have valuation disclosures coming up fairly soon, and 2 that are as soon as September. Conducting an appraisal takes some time, so if you are going to make the policy decision of retaining an appraisal, which allows you to actively defend the claim, as opposed to just having your assessor going in and testifying in support of what manner of cost less depreciation assessment she did, then you need to have an appraisal. I spoke with at least 3 different potential appraisers. One who was recommended by the Fahey-Schultz firm, who expressed no interest in handling anything this remote from where he's located. Another one from another state that I guess after some discussion I had some reservations in terms of whether he really understood the economic issues that affect the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I just felt we would need to educate him to bring him on board. Miles Anderson is the name of the current appraiser that's before you with proposals this evening. He is the appraiser who offered testimony in the recent Menards versus City of Escanaba case that the Court of Appeals decided favorably to the City of Escanaba. He is local from the Upper Peninsula, so he understands the economies and transactions and the dark store scenario and so forth. It's broken down into 4 different bid proposals for the 4 that have most imminent valuation disclosures. And I guess you would have the option of accepting all, none, or some of them. But they range in price from $7,000 up to $15,000. The $15,000 one, I would remind you, however, is actually, it's one appeal, but it's 3 separate, quite different building structures. That's why that one is double some of the others. I'd be
And you
happy
were,
to-
excuse me, you're looking for what kind of a motion then to have, to retain Mr. Anderson to cover 8 pending tax tribunal?
You don't need to, no, you don't
No?
need to
You didn't
address
mention
these
that.
other ones. Right now, you have 2 or 4. You have 2 that are coming due in September that if he's going to get a September appraisal in, that has to be done yesterday.
Should we
the-
just make it general then to hire him to do?
Sure. Essentially, what you're doing also is replacing Bruce Klosser, who you used as your appraisal for a number of years. Mr. Klosser was a little bit, well, he's got national repute on business appraisals. He was a little less formal, and I don't recall ever actually having a written contract from him. The assessor would call him up and ask him, how much is it going to cost us to get an appraisal on this? And would say either yay or nay, and at some point, she had been provided the authority under the supervisor to engage him or not engage him. This is a new contractor essentially, so really there needs to be board action to initiate his retention.
I did read through his, everything he sent. I was impressed with the energy that he showed supporting the UP businesses and what we're trying to do. His background was impressive. He's, from what I've been told, he's costs less than Glosser. Say that 3 times fast. The cost is less. I just enjoyed reading his background. I thought it was, he's ready to go. Yes, Randy?
This dates back to the board's original action in the Lowe's case, when the board authorized challenging the tax tribunal cases. We had a fairly lengthy relationship with Glosser and Associates. They did in most of the appeals, residential and some of the business appeals that came up prior to the tax tribunal taking the big box theory, was representing us and had built up quite a reputation for understanding what we needed and what we were looking for. He retired, and his partner did not continue the business, and in fact relocated back to Germany. So we've been without an appraiser, and we've been looking for an appraiser who was skilled in these kinds of appraisals because we had so many tax tribunal cases. We were the target basically for the majority of the cases that came up. And Mr. Anderson's name did come up early on. He was not available at that time. We continued to look through Fahey and through Fahey Schultz and through Rogers' firm for an appraiser, and he came back up to the surface again as available. And what we're looking at is a retainer agreement, basically retaining him to represent us in these immediate cases, and then on a case-by-case basis going forward. Not all of those will come back to you. We're looking for approval from the board as him as our appraiser.
Accept Mr. Anderson as the township appraiser.
Second.
Motion and second. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
The only question I have is, are we just giving him an open book now to go after these, or what, as they come up, he will be addressing them then?
It would be a case-by-case situation where we would have to confer with the supervisor, who's essentially the chief assessing officer, even though we have a hired assessor, to reach that determination. In many instances, in the past several years, we've been able to actually negotiate some fairly favorable settlements in cases when we have not retained an appraiser, based upon our assessor's pretty exemplary knowledge about local sales and comparables, and being able to take a look at the appraisals from the people who are doing the appealing and arguing why they are off base. So between the assessor and I, we've made some fairly decent arguments and have settled a number of those without incurring that fairly substantial additional expense, because keep in mind that the cost of an appraisal exceeds the cost of the amount of taxes that you're getting and retaining in the township on some of those properties at least. So we look at those very cautiously before going ahead and engaging in appraisal, but we have somewhat of a sense of which ones are going to go down to the wire.
So the motion before us now is to retain this person as our, retain him as our
Appraiser.
appraiser. And then as individual incidents will come up, they'll be back before us negotiating the fee.
Yes, with slight modification. You've got before you 4 specific
Yep.
properties. So all we are doing at this point is engaging him for those 4 parcels. We are not doing necessarily an open end, because he would often have to determine whether he even has a conflict on some other parcels. So your motion is to engage him as an appraiser on these 4 specific properties you have before you.
Question on the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Motion carried.
Public comment.
Anybody wishing to address the board?
6 ayes and 1 sick call.
Yeah. Nobody, okay, additional comments from board members? Anything? Nope. Okay. Then I need a motion to go into closed session.
Actually, 2 motions.
Oh, I figured we'd have to do them separately.
Well, yeah.
Oh, Dan, I'm sorry.
Due to the possibility of a conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest, I request to be excused from all discussions, deliberations.
And decisions covering the lawsuit, Sims versus Charter Township of Marquette.
I'll make a motion, we excuse trustee Pompo from the first closed session.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Supervisor?
Sir.
I'm a party to the cases, and I should be excused as well.
I'll move that we excuse the township manager
Support.
from the closed session.
And
the first
just as an
closed session.
explanation on that, this is going to be a status report with possible future alternatives of handling by the township's attorney in pending litigation. You will recall you've retained separate counsel on behalf of other defendants, the former supervisor and the current
sorry,
township
Roger.
manager. So the current township manager, that is a valid basis for excluding him from this closed session as well.
We need to call, roll,
I figured we'd have to do 2 separate ones, no?
we need to move on that motion, excuse the township manager.
Okay. And we do have a motion and a second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Okay, the first closed session, I will make a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268, subsection E, to consult with an attorney regarding trial settlement strategy in connection with Pacific pending litigation, but only if an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect on the litigating or settlement position of the public body, and that's Sims versus the Township of Marquette.
Second.
Motion and a second. We need roll call.
Yep. Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries. 5 yes, 0 no, and 1 absent and 1 abstention. And then I'll make a motion, which the manager and trustee Pompo will be party to. Enter into closed session, MCL 15.268, and that's the wrong subsection, but it's for strategies and negotiation sessions connected with the negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement if either negotiating party requests a closed hearing. And I make a motion for that also.
Second it.
Motion
Yep.
and support.
I have a question. Since trustee Pompo will be a party to this, will he be allowed to vote on this one? Yes, correct.
On the collective bargaining?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
Okay, we are now officially in closed session at 8:52 PM.